Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire Mag, the premier inspirational digital magazine for women since 2006. Still pinching myself there. At this moment, we're getting ready for our 13th anniversary Mission to Inspire campaign. If you haven't claimed your free subscription, go to subscribe-to-aspire.com. I also want to invite you, I am super excited to share that inspiredlivinguniversity.com, the doors are open for students and expert instructors to join our sacred community. If you're a woman on the path of self-discovery and transformation, be sure to register for VIP notice at inspiredlivinguniversity.com so you'll know when we open the door to students again. You know, if you follow the show, you know I'm all about bringing you guests that inspire, empower, and support you in living your best life. And I don't know about you, but I believe we can all use a little more love and happiness in our life. Dr. Lisa Thompson shares strategies today to reveal and heal blockages and limitations. Blockages and limitations that I believe all of us have in one way or another, but until we become conscious of them, it can prevent us from creating the life, love, and relationships we wish to attract. Lisa will also be explaining how to create new life patterns in space for love, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Dr. Lisa Thompson is a scientist, award-winning interior designer, and life, love, soul coach, specializing in past life regression therapy and human design. She works with clients to create environments that support them physically, emotionally, and spiritually, to release limitations, and to access self-love, worthiness, and inner wisdom. She is the best-selling author of Sacred Soul Love, Manifesting True Love and Happiness by Revealing and Healing Blockages and Limitations, as well as Sacred Soul Spaces, Designing Your Personal Oasis. She's also a contributing author of the international bestseller Inspirations, 101 Uplifting Stories for Daily Happiness. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Linda. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Well, my whole brand is about love, 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 spreading messages of positivity and inspiration. And when we connected and I got to know about your message and brand, I said, and then your new book, I was like, we got to get her on the show to talk about this. So what began your journey into this work? Because you have this beautiful melding of the scientist, but also the spiritual. So how did that come to be?
Well, so I actually grew up in an esoteric metaphysical household. My mother was a professional astrologer, and all of her friends were astrologists, tarot card readers, psychics, and witches. So that was just a natural part of who I was growing up. And then we moved to Washington State to become part of a spiritual school of enlightenment as well when I was 13. Now, science, though, I've always had an obsession and fascination with animals. And so when I was 9, I read a book about Eugenie Clark, the shark lady, and I decided I wanted to become a shark scientist like she was. So with that single focus in mind, I was spiritual in the background, but I was a scientist moving forward in my career. And I went all the way through and got my PhD studying the evolution, physiology, and anatomy of animals, specifically sharks and their relatives. And then it's only been in the past maybe 5 years or so that I decided that I needed to incorporate more of the spiritual side into my life. And I was called with the interior design work that I do to focus more on spiritual design and incorporate science into that as well, and spirituality. So over the last several years, I've been studying different modalities like past life regression and human design to be able to work with clients in a very healing, effective way.
What I love is you call yourself a life, love, and soul coach, right? And when I hear soul coach, to me it's like working from the inside out. But what does it mean to you to be a life, love, and soul coach?
Well, I have had many transitions in my own life, career and relationship and soul journey kinds of transitions. And so I'm actually on my third career. I'm on my third marriage. I've done some major transformations overall in my life and my soul journey. And so I want to work with clients at a holistic level, looking at all parts of themselves, because I want them to be on the journey of their soul, not just what society wants them to do or traditional coaching of it has to be done this way. Every person is unique in how they operate and what's going to be best for them. And so looking at all aspects of their life, I feel is really important to give them the greatest benefit.
I love it. So it's like a deep dive into their own truth so they can live from that place and not shoulds and have-tos.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, yeah. I lived from the shoulds and have-tos for 3 decades, and finally I said, I'm rebelling. And
me too, actually.
yeah, and then I started living from the inside out. And actually, other than Aspire magazine, all my brands have the word inspired living or inspired in them. And because for me, inspired means from in spirit, and to me that word means from the inside out, right? So basically it's learning to trust. We were all given that divine navigation system, right?
Yeah,
and learning the tools like you teach, like the human design and the past life regression. Really, those tools aren't, along with many others, aren't telling your clients what to do. It's saying, let's take a journey. So
Absolutely.
You can get to know your truth.
Well, and that's what I love about those tools is because it's just helping the clients access their own inner wisdom, because we all have it. We just need to learn how to hear it and trust that it actually is our wisdom. How
do you explain to clients when they first come to you that if they're women new on the path, right, who don't know how to trust their intuition, or maybe they don't even know they have access to their own intuition? What's some of the guidance you give to someone that's just starting to dive into this journey?
Well, there are so many ways to actually be able to access the wisdom that we have inside. And so one of the things that I would do is run their human design chart to find out how they are specifically designed. For instance, I get my inner wisdom from my gut. So if I have a gut reaction to something, then I know immediately it's a yes or a no. But other people, they might have to go through an emotional roller coaster before they come to their inner wisdom of a yes or no answer. The other thing is that with past life regression, we're exposing what the soul wants that person to know. And so I'm taking notes as they're going through the past life regression journey, and that inner wisdom is naturally coming out of them from their subconscious mind.
I love it. I love that you have this, I don't know, I want to say it's almost like you're leading them down a path, right, back to themselves. And the tools just help you navigate it.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's all their wisdom coming up. It's like you're the facilitator.
Correct. It's not my job to tell them how to live their life or what to do. They can get to their own answers, and I coach them, I guide them along that path and help open up opportunities for them to discover who they truly are and what they actually want in their life.
And so for me, I haven't had a past life regression. I actually refer a lot of my clients, isn't that funny? I refer my clients out. So maybe it's time that I have one. But I believe in all the modalities out there that help us dive deeper into the truth of who we are. For many years, I struggled because I lived in my head with the shoulds, all that anxiety, depression for the first I'd say a little over 3 decades of my life. And I did all the outside stuff to try to heal, all that unhealthy stuff as well as the healthy stuff to try to either cover up the crap or try to dive deeper into it. I just didn't know what I was doing. But it wasn't until, and I tell my audience this because, when someone sees what you do now, they don't know the story that got you there, right? And I like to have women on the show that say, hey, this was my journey and this was my truth. So for me, it wasn't until I went inward that I was able to heal the stuff that I carried for 3 decades. So that's how I see the work that you do, from my understanding, is getting them to pause and go inward to get the answers. And I know personally that's where transformation is.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And that's actually what I had to do for myself. I came into this world with parents that weren't necessarily there for me, and I realized that I chose them for different learning experiences. And it took me a good 40 years to truly dive deep into myself to heal all the wounds that I had. And I tried to do external fixes as well, like you, and that didn't work. It really did take going deep inside myself to figure out I was the common denominator in all of the scenarios I was creating in my life, and that I had to be the one to make the changes. It couldn't be done for me, and there wasn't a magic pill or Band-Aid that I could put on it.
Oh, wow, we have a lot in common, because the day I realized that I was the common denominator, I had a temper tantrum with the divine, because that meant I had to look at myself. Isn't that what it felt like that day you realized it? It was like, yes. Oh, shit.
It was, right? Exactly that way, like, oh.
Yeah, and I didn't want to acknowledge it, but my soul knew the truth, that what I was receiving, that I was the common denominator, was the truth, and I could ignore it and continue on the path I was on, which means unhappiness and self-sabotage, or I could do the work. And it sounds like we both chose to do the work. Not always fun, though, is it?
No, it's definitely not necessarily fun, but for real happiness, lasting joy, it's just so important. Because a lot of people, they want to live their life blaming other people and being a victim. And I was that for many, many years. My first marriage was very abusive, and I couldn't believe that I had gotten myself in that situation, and, oh, what a bad man he is. But actually, it was just an experience that I created to learn the wisdom, and I had a part in that as well.
It's beautiful that when we do the work, even though, as we said, it's not always easy, I found that taking that path forward is always easier than being where I was. So, yes. In other words, I didn't mind the discomfort because I knew I was moving towards something. Where when we're in the pain body and the stories and the victimhood, as I lived in too, it felt more like a stuckness. But when you choose to do the work, the only difference, I don't know about you, Lisa, at the time, I was a single welfare mom, and my daughter's 35 now. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have someone like you that I could call or book a session with. That didn't exist, and if it did, it was not in my awareness, and we sure in the heck didn't have the online world where we could press a button, right, have access to all these amazing resources. So that's why it's so important to me in the work that I do to support women on their path is to have guests like you on my show. Because there's someone listening right now who may feel stuck in an area of their life, and they're going to resonate with everything you're saying. And that brings my heart joy because it's like, oh, good, she'll reach out to Lisa. In other words, they don't have to do it alone.
No, they don't. And I know when I was really at the bottom of the barrel with that first husband, I felt like I had nowhere to go. I was completely isolated from friends and family, and I had a baby daughter at the time, and I finally got the courage to leave him when she was 7 months old. And I actually went through my own financial detrimental journey after that point. I had to file bankruptcy. I had to restart my life from ground zero. It was like a completely brand new life. And fortunately, I did have the spiritual background that I did, and so I used some of those tools that I knew that I hadn't been using, and I did find a few people that were in similar situations that helped guide me through. They weren't coaches, but they had been in similar situations that had gotten out of it. And so that started the journey. And then later, I hired coaches and other people to really help me dive deep to really heal those problems.
That's beautiful. I call them earth angels. They just come into our life at the right time.
Yes, absolutely. They do.
We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to talk about, because we just talked about our past, when we come back from break, I'd like to know how our parental, ancestral, and love relationships contribute to the limiting beliefs that we carry. I can't wait to dive into this yummy topic with Lisa, and we'll be back in a moment. You can learn more about Dr. Lisa Thompson at mysticmanta.com. We'll be right back.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Hey, America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Dr. Lisa Thompson, the author of Sacred Soul Love. So, Lisa, you and I were just talking about our past, and we know that, we carried a lot of stuff from our childhood. I'm raising my hand, too, and I'm sure every woman on this call is raising their hand. So, how do our parental, ancestral, and love relationships contribute to the limiting beliefs that we have in our life now?
Well, I'll start with the love relationships because that's the one that we're probably most aware of. We have these experiences starting from maybe the first relationship that we have as kids or teenagers. And we have the experience, but then we tend to make up stories about what that experience means, whether it's positive or negative. And then we might have our next relationship, and then we make up stories about that. So each of those love experiences that we have adds to the overall belief system that becomes ingrained in our lives. So we're repeating patterns over and over. And for me, that was a series of toxic relationships. Now, as far as the parental relationships, when I think about my parents, I was exposed to the environment I was in. So my parents divorced when I was 2. My mother moved me to a different state. I only saw my dad maybe once or twice a year. So I developed this story of abandonment from the relationship that I had with my father. And then my mother was so busy being a single mom, trying to work and provide for us, as well as having her personal life. And she never remarried. So she had stories that she would talk about or that I would just witness. And that became part of my story, too, my belief system of men are bad or you can only depend on yourself, never trust anyone, stories like that. I also had family members that watching how they would interact in relationships and the things that they would say to me. And then as far as the ancestral relationships, well, you know, my mom, her parents were not great parents, if you think about good or bad. They were not there for her, so she never learned how to be a parent, and it probably continued further back in that ancestral line. The other part of the ancestral relationships is that they've just now done studies recently finding that emotions are carried in our genetics from our ancestors, and so we could be possibly 7 generations back of carrying an emotion in our DNA that is just naturally a part of who we are. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to expose that part of our DNA to produce the proteins, but if we're in a common environment to what our parents were in and what their parents were in, then we are going to feel those same emotions that our ancestors did. And in the case of my family, one of the big issues was self-love and actually lack of self-love, not feeling worthy and lovable.
Ooh, so you could feel, you could see the thread woven, and I have to say that was one of mine, was the same. And self-care, which reflected into how I took care of my body. I don't know if it went that way for you, the physical health and physical care.
It definitely did, and one of the things that was evident where, I mean, it really was, I had to look in the mirror at this really, really strongly, was my mother's side of the family, there is a major history of heart attacks. My mother had a heart attack, her sister had a heart attack, her brother had a heart attack, and my granddaddy had a heart attack. They were all 65 when they had the heart attacks. And so there's a, physical genetic component of heart disease, but it actually, the heart is the 4th chakra, which is all about love. And so when you look at what the underlying emotion of heart disease and heart attacks is, it's lack of self-love. And what I was able to do with one of my cousins on that side of the family is I took her on an ancestral healing of our bloodline, and we were able to get to the root ancestor of that cause of lack of self-love. And it was a Viking ancestor many generations ago, and it just propagated. And so what we were able to do in the relaxed state that she was in was try to reverse the damage through our line. And that's one thing that I love about past life regression and the tools that go along with it, is that when you are in a completely relaxed state, you can actually change the story of what is going on at that particular time in your life or in a past life, or even affecting family lines, where when you come out of the regression, then your brain starts to rewire, and it all happens at the quantum level.
I love this shit. I love this stuff. Yeah, I get, because I believe it, and when I know something to be true, even if I haven't experienced it, I get a feeling inside me. I just call it soul truth, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have to experience it, but when I hear truth and know that it's there's something beyond us. Yeah. So I got that feeling when you were talking, because I believe that we can heal the ancestral stories. I might not be able to understand how it works, but it's a knowing that it's possible. So for you, knowing that the 65 years old on that side, did you grow up with that story of I'm not going to make it to 65, that kind of energy?
Actually, no, because my granddaddy, he was 65 when he died of the heart attack, and he didn't have any siblings that had the same issue. And in fact, I never really knew his siblings or even how many he had. I knew something about his mother, but my family, they didn't really talk about their other family members. And so it wasn't until my mother had her heart attack at 65, she's the oldest, But then 2 years later, her brother died of his heart attack at 65, and then 2 years later, my aunt had her heart attack. That was really the wake-up call of like, oh my God, I'm almost 47, so now, I've got less than 20 years before that ticking time bomb, potentially. And so it really was a wake-up call for me, like, okay, well, how am I actually living? Where is my mindset? What am I doing that might be similar to what my family members are doing? And they all had, different health histories. My mother, she's a smoker. She's been a smoker since she was 16. But my aunt and uncle, they were never smokers. My aunt, we thought she was the healthy one in the family, but yet she had the same problem. So it really was something that my cousins and I had to look at when it happened to so many of the family members. Now,
I think it's powerful that you had those tools to be able to guide them through it, too.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of my
But
cousins...
I know... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my cousin, though, of the daughter of my uncle that did die, his story that he did tell the family was he knew he was going to die at 65. He would constantly say that. Both of his daughters shared that story with me of like, so we didn't know, was he just intuiting that he was going to die, or did he actually manifest it because he believed it so strongly?
Yeah, sometimes I believe manifesting. We have a friend like that, and the words out of his mouth are all the time. And he is probably about 62 now. He always says, you know what, I'm about to cross over the fence anytime now, so might as well live the way I want. And we're like, well, if you took care of yourself, maybe you wouldn't cross over. But in his mind, he's been saying for years that he wouldn't make it to 63 because no one in his family did.
Well,
so, yeah. So I understand that feeling. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, I know you work a lot with physical space, and this is another one of my topics, especially as I'm building a new house, and I love feng shui and space clearing, and I'd love to get your take on it. So we'll be back in a moment with Dr. Lisa Thompson. You can learn more at mysticmanta.com.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
We can all use a little more peace and joy in our lives. Don't you agree? Counselor, best-selling author, and self-nurturing expert Kelly Grimes of CultivatingPeaceandJoy.com is passionate about empowering overwhelmed and exhausted women to live with more peace, joy, and meaning through the practice of self-nurturing. Through her experience working with individuals, speaking, providing workshops, and teaching professional and leadership development to forward-thinking organizations, Kelly knows that nurturing peace in the world begins from the inside out. That's why she created the free Cultivating Peace and Joy mobile app that brings you beautiful self-nurturing reminders, guided meditations, empowering practice tools, and daily prompts with an inspiring question to guide your daily self-nurturing practice. Download your free Cultivating Peace and Joy mobile app today at cultivatingpeaceandjoy.com.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTRFM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hi, you're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm so glad you're here with us today. I'm Linda Joy, your host, and with me is Dr. Lisa Thompson, scientist, award-winning interior designer, and life, love, soul coach, specializing in past life regression therapy and human design. So come on, let's talk about how physical space impacts our environment. Because I know you're an interior designer, but you also have all these spiritual elements, so I'd love to hear how you tie it all together.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. So I've been an interior designer for almost 11 years now, and the way that I approach space is a little bit different than traditional interior designers. Part of it has to do with the science background I have, because one of the things is that color affects us psychologically and physiologically at the subconscious level. So there's science behind it, but there's an energetic component, a spiritual component to color. And then with the feng shui studies that I've done, then, the way that we place furniture in a room affects the energy flow, and the amount of furniture and artwork and accessories also affects the energy flow within a room. So combining all of those elements together, looking at the color, the amount of clutter in a space, the way that the furniture is positioned, the amount of items that are in a room, all have a direct impact on the physical space. Have you ever been in someone's house and you don't know why, but you just love the way that it feels and you just want to stay there? Have you experienced that?
Oh, yeah, we've all had that experience.
Okay. And then have you been in maybe a friend or family's house where you cannot wait to get out of there? There's something that just doesn't feel right in that environment.
Yeah, especially clutter, and when I feel it's just a knowing in my body. That's where I feel it.
Yeah, and I feel that way too. Like clutter actually causes me to feel a little bit claustrophobic. I have a hard time breathing, and it just really bothers me. And over the last 11 years, I've been in thousands of clients' homes, and I guide them in the decluttering process and how to place their furniture so that their space feels and looks good. Because a lot of people don't realize that something is off. I mean, they can feel it in their body, but they don't know why it's off. But it typically has to do with one of those things that I just mentioned.
Well, part of it is how did you tie the two together personally? Like, interior design is all about the eye and feel, but what made you want to incorporate the energy in? Just because of your own experience with energy?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's, I've created, without even knowing what I was doing when I was younger, before I did interior design, I've been creating spaces that look and feel good. And now I realize it's because of that energetic component to it. And so when I started understanding really the mechanics behind that, that's when I was like, oh, this is something that can actually benefit clients even more so than, okay, that just looks pretty. But, it really does have to feel good energetically. And there are things that we can put in our environment, like certain plants or crystals or imagery or certain colors that'll give us different feelings in that environment, and then actually help us strengthen the ability to manifest our dreams and goals in different ways. And that's what my first book is about, is actually how to create intentional spaces to manifest specific dreams and goals.
And for the listeners, I want to say the name of the book. It's Sacred Soul Spaces, Designing Your Personal Oasis. And that's by Dr. Lisa Thompson, our guest today. And I encourage you to go get it. By the way, I love the name that you use for your brand.
Thank you.
It just really speaks to where the energy and intention is coming from. I didn't get to tell you that offline and wanted to be sure I said that because it really resonated with me, which is why you're here today.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I started, got a house that we just sold. On social media it's called #BigHouse because it gets confusing for people, but that house, when we built it 19 years ago, I bought my first feng shui book, right? I just wanted to, and I was getting into energy and how I felt. I was on a journey, and I did the whole house with the knowledge that I had using that book. This goes in this Bhagavad, this one does not, that type of thing.
Right.
And I have to tell you, it's what you said about people walk into your house and go, well, even the oil man never wanted to leave. The electrician that sit out on the deck and porch overlooking the water going, oh, my God, it's so peaceful here. Well, flash forward, we sold the house a year ago today, in fact, so it's funny that we're having this conversation. And guess what? We sold it to 5 sisters, and by sisters I don't mean family members, 5 nuns who said, they're all young, 40 and under, they travel the world, and they said to us, we knew the moment we walked in this house it was a sacred space. And Dana and I looked at each other. He goes, I think your woo stuff works.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
But it's about energy and intention, right?
It is.
So, yeah, they love it. So now we're 4 weeks away from moving into the home we've been building. It's the same thing. I call it intentional living. I want everything I bring into that home to be intentional. Because after 18 years, what I found in boxes at the other house when we moved, I'm like, why do we keep things in boxes for 18 years that we never even looked at? So what's your guidance on that when someone has a basement or an attic filled with stuff they haven't even looked at? How does that play into our life, energy, success, health, happiness?
Well, the way that I understand it and have experienced it is it actually does create blockages. So the more that we're able to clear out the clutter, the physical clutter in our lives, even with our email inboxes or our computer desktops, the more that we can clear out things that we really don't need or want or love, then if we clear those out, it makes space for new opportunities to come into our life. And so, an example, my mother, she's the complete opposite of me. She is a classified hoarder. And what that has done is it has really affected her health, and it has also affected the opportunities that come into her life. Where me, every time I clear out a space, and I try to do this maybe once every month or two, I'll find a new space where I just want to start fresh, so I take everything out of the space and I really analyze, okay, is this something that I use or need? So is it functional? Have I used it in the last year or two? Or like for clothes, have I worn it? Is it in good shape? And if the answer is no, then it's something that I can release. Now, a lot of people that I work with, and just to finish that thought, when I do that, what I notice is almost immediately after I clear a space, then I have new opportunities that just come to me naturally because it's opening up a space for those new opportunities to come in. A lot of the clients that I work with, they are emotionally tied to items out of obligation. So sometimes people will get gifts from family members that they feel like they have to display possibly, or they can't throw it away. Maybe it's a set of china that's been passed down, but they're never going to use it. It's in a box in their basement. If it's something that's not functional like that, in my world, it is okay to let go of things, that we should not hold on to things just out of obligation because it's for our family members.
Oh, I know, because my mom's going through it now. She's 80. She goes, I don't want my children fighting. We just had this conversation yesterday. And I said, Mom, please, and I've been telling this for 10 years, please toss anything. Do not save it for me. There's nothing I need. There's nothing I want. right? I already told her the one thing, a ring. You know what I mean? Okay. That was it.
Right.
But, so my daughter's over there, and she goes, honey, aren't you going to take all these pictures? Nick said, no. Grandma, we don't need them. I just took the ones that are special to me. She goes, but I'll just keep holding on to them just in case you change your mind. She goes, Grandma, we've been having this conversation for 10 years. I haven't changed my mind. But every time she goes through that box. So is it she doesn't want to let go of the memories, but that's also keeping energy stuck in the house.
It is.
Like what makes people get – it's almost like she's afraid that if she lets it go, even though she's saying it's our decision, like, do you want this? No. What do you mean you don't want it? And then she says it anyway, even though she asked the question, do you want it? And we say no. So it's something in her, which is her story, right, that she can't actually let it go.
Well, and I think sometimes that's a generational thing, because if you think of the baby boomers and how they grew up in the Depression era, the people that grew up in those earlier times have a different feeling about keeping things because of there might be some scarcity mentality.
I would agree with that then.
But then also, I think as people get older, and this of course is not true for everyone, but some people feel like if they're letting go of the items, they're going to lose those memories. And,
that's a nice way of looking at it. That could be a fear.
Alzheimer's or dementia, but it's like a fear of losing the memory.
Well, it's a great insight for me to look at it in a new way. The whole family just goes, oh, we're having that conversation again. She's clearing things out. And she does, don't get me wrong, she's gotten rid of a lot. But when you have the same conversation about the same boxes, there's got to be something. And now that you said it, I think it's she doesn't want us to regret getting rid of the memories. So, yes. But it's based on her own stuff.
It is, completely.
But you gave me a new way to look at it, and navigate it with her. So I wanted to go back to your first book, your newest book, Sacred Soul Love. What inspired you to write that book?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I have had a series of toxic relationships most of my life. And I've had 2 ex-husbands. So the first husband was pretty abusive. He was a little bit physical a couple times, but then it was mostly emotional and verbal, which is sometimes even harder to see and deal with. And then my second marriage was, I didn't heal myself before I got into the relationship with him. I was still going through the divorce with my first husband. And 5 months into the relationship, I got pregnant with my second child, my son. And so I stayed with him out of the feeling of obligation, and I had the opportunity to heal before I got into that relationship. We probably never would have been together in the first place, and I definitely wouldn't have stayed with him. And so what I had to do when I decided to end that marriage was, like we talked about, I was the common denominator in all those relationships. And so I was like, why do I keep attracting these same things? I really want a healthy, happy relationship. And I didn't have anyone in my family that had that experience. So I didn't have anyone as a role model that I grew up with to see what that looked like. And working with a few different coaches and different healing modalities, that's when I did the deep work to really heal myself and find that self-love. So the book was actually, I did start writing it when I left my first husband, which was about 5 years ago. But I couldn't finish the book until that journey was complete, where I felt like, okay, I do actually now have my happy ending. And so a year ago, I married the love of my life in Thailand, and we've been together for 4 years. And it's a relationship that I always wanted, that I dreamed about, but I didn't know how to have it until I did the healing. And so I wanted to write the book to journey actually what the processes were that I did that helped me heal, to be an inspiration for others, that maybe they could use some of those tools and modalities to heal themselves if they're in a similar situation.
I love it. So it's what the show's all about. It's women who have gone on a journey of transformation and whose mess became their message. And that's what I think, as we go into 2020, this is what it's all about, is us stepping up to share our wisdom to help others transform their life. So thank you for writing Sacred Soul Love as well as Sacred Soul Spaces. And we're going to take a real short break and come into the final segment. I was so enjoying the conversation, I must forget our last break. So I'll be back in a moment. I'm with Dr. Lisa Thompson, author of Sacred Soul Love, Manifesting True Love and Happiness by Revealing and Healing Blockages and Limitations. We'll be back in a moment.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Experience a homecoming to your heart. In the foreword of Dr. Deborah Riebel's new book, Being Love, How Loving Yourself Creates Ripples of Transformation in Your Relationships and the World, Marcy Shimoff shares, the answer to our inner longing isn't finding love, it's being love. The practices that Dr. Deborah presents in Being Love are keys to opening your heart and receiving your divine birthright as a physical manifestation of love. Her techniques, developed over years of successful private practice with her clients and from her extensive training in multiple disciplines, are accessible, compassionate, and effective. Her message is powerful, and if you allow it, will change your whole life. Order your copy of Being Love today at beinglovebook.com and receive over 45 transformational gifts. Being Love is brought to you by Inspired Living Publishing.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm so glad you're here with us today. I'm with Dr. Lisa Thompson, and we were just talking about her book, Sacred Soul Love, what led to her writing it. And, you know, one of the things that I believe, Lisa, is that we're given the things we go through to help us, and it took me decades to realize this, that it's all part of our journey of what our true purpose is here. Can you look back now, and I know you're younger than me at 47, but can you look back now and say, I can see why I had all those experiences because they're now feeding into what I'm doing now?
I definitely can. And because with that hindsight, it actually gives me a new way to look at those situations so that I don't judge myself, which I used to do. I used to be my worst critic, my worst judge. And so now I can look back at my situations that I put myself into and love myself and give compassion to myself and understand that it was all part of a greater lesson in life to gain the wisdom. Because I do believe that we come here to learn certain things, and I don't believe that we only live just one life, that we have opportunities to come back and learn new things each time. And so I just happen to have wanted to learn the lesson of love in this life.
Oh, yeah. And what one of my clients, who also happens to be an expert columnist for Aspire Mag, Dr. Deborah Riebel, she always says, you know what, I want to figure this stuff out in this lifetime because I am not repeating this again.
Yes,
and
that's how
so
I
when
feel
you look
too.
at it, when you look at it from that lens, it's you want to do the work, you want to dive deep to heal the stories and wounds and blockages, and your book is going to be a powerful resource to help women do exactly that. So what else do you offer over at mysticmanta.com that we haven't talked about today? Is there anything exciting that you have coming up, you're working on?
Well, I've already started writing my next book, and I'm really excited about that. I know. I never thought that I would be an author. You know, when I was in high school and college having to write papers, I really did not enjoy it. And then, you know, when I was in grad school, part of what I had to do was actually write scientific papers, and that was easy because there's a formula to it, and it's just matter of fact. But when you actually have to start writing about things where you're exposing your vulnerability and sharing your soul, that's a whole different animal. But what I'm finding is that I love writing, and I love sharing the messages and the wisdom that I've gained over these years. So the next book that I'm currently working on is all about spirit animal messengers. I love, you know, with my animal background, I love spirit animals, and I actually am very in tune when animals come to me to give me specific messages. So I do take note of, like, maybe the spiders around me or the bumblebees or any particular kind of birds that cross my path, and especially if they're crossing it more than once in a very short time, then I know that that is a message from the universe that I need to pay attention to and figure out, okay, what's the message there for me?
Oh, I love it. It's like having that awareness. Dragonflies have been my messenger for the last year, and I love when I'm sitting outside when I'm journaling, and like one lands on my knee, and suddenly another one lands on my elbow. I stop whatever I'm doing, and I just stare at them. I go, I'm listening. What do you need me to know? Because it's just, I believe that the world has always given us messages, and animals, as you said, and I believe that, like, feathers are another sign for me. Like when you find feathers just sitting there on a windy day, everything else is blown away, and there's a feather right there on your doorstep. I'm like, okay, I see it. So, no, I love it. When do you expect it to be out, just to give everyone an idea?
Yeah, my goal is to have it ready for spring of 2020. One thing that I'm really good at is when I get into a writing project, I actually can complete it pretty quickly. So I've been working on it, and working with my publisher, that's the goal. So hopefully before May of 2020, so maybe release it.
Hey, congratulations. Beautiful time to be birthing it, too.
Yeah.
Spring and that energy, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And I want to invite everyone again to go to mysticmanta.com. And, you know, we have a couple more moments, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about when you were talking earlier about the sacred soul spaces. What's something someone can do in their home right now to shift the energy, even if it's one or two strategies that maybe they can look at? We have about 2.5 minutes, but I love leaving them with a piece of wisdom or a strategy they can implement today.
Yeah, so one of the easiest and free things that you can do is take a space and clear the clutter, for sure. It costs no money, and you will feel an immediate change in the energy of the space. Now, for those of the listeners that know how to smudge, that can get any negative or stagnant energy out of a room as well. I love smudging my house, and my kids actually always remind me, Mom, it's time to smudge again, because they can feel the energy shift when I do.
And what do you use to smudge? Actual smudge sticks or a spray? What do you prefer?
So I actually use white sage most of the time, although I did get a new cedar stick recently that I'm looking forward to trying. And I do have a spray that I actually used before our call just to clear the space. But I do like the smoke of the sage, and so that's what I use almost.
I have a bundle. I use a spray all the time, a spray that I bought, 9 years ago. I order refills. I haven't had it for 9 years. And I just love it. And it's from somebody out in, I think, Medicine Bowl in Arizona. You know how sometimes you smell something and you just know? That's what I do. So before a call like today, I spray myself all around my computer to prepare for our space. So I love that type of energy clearing. It's so simple that anyone can do it.
It is. Yeah, and it's very low cost to do, too. I mean, you can buy like a sage bundle for just a few dollars, and it lasts a long time. So,
well, I think that's a great tip to leave our callers with, and listeners, I should say. And I am so grateful that you were able to join me today. I look forward to our listeners going over to Mystic Mind to learn more about your 2 books, Sacred Soul Love and Sacred Soul Spaces, as well as the transformational work you're doing in the world. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
And everyone, I look forward to having you join me every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, live here on the OMTimes Radio Network, or you can access the replay of all shows across all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts. Until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.